Hey guys, Kinsey here. Before we get to the introduction, I just want to ask you a huge favor. I am doing the end of the year 2017 survey for the podcast, and I would love it if you would fill it out for me. It helps me shape the future of She Creates Business and the podcast, and you are my people. So you are the ones I want to hear from. I am drawing for a $200 Amazon gift card from all of the folks who fill out that survey for me. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in shaping the future of the show, I would love to have you. Go ahead and tap your podcast player. Click the link that says take the survey here, and you'll be taken right to the Google form. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. That survey is going to be open until Sunday, December 2nd, 2017. And then I'm going to draw, or December 3rd. I'm sorry, it's December 3rd. And then I'm going to draw for the gift card on Monday, December 4th. Guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Or you can find me on Instagram. The link is also in my bio. You're awesome. Okay, here's the introduction.
This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Well, hello there and happy Thursday. Welcome to She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. So happy to be here with you today. Thanks so much for listening in. As always, I know you guys have a ton of choices, especially now and lately when it comes to podcasting. So I just really appreciate you tuning into this show and being here with me today. My guest today is Mary Swaffield, and I'm really pleased to have her on the show. She is a wealth of information, and I really enjoyed listening to her story because she has been through a lot and she was very open and raw about all of it. And I like that because the journey in business isn't, it's not like paved in gold, and it's not like rainbow unicorn puppy kittens all the time. Sometimes it's hard and stressful. Sometimes we fail. And Mary was really open about all of that in this episode. And I think it's just a great time to air this episode as we close out the end of the year. Maybe you're feeling like you didn't hit all of your goals, or maybe you feel really great about all of your goals. Either way, I think this episode is a great one to look at and say, hey, it doesn't always work out with the one thing, but then when you get to the next thing, it works out even better. So Mary, just if you're listening, thank you again so much for being so real and so raw on this episode. It was truly my pleasure to have you on the show. And before we get to the show, you guys, I just want to let you know, if you missed the announcement last week, the opt-in shop at shecreatesbusinesspodcast.com is now open. The opt-in shop is a shop that I created that is done for you, plug and play opt-ins and content upgrades for your business. So if you have been wanting to build your email list, if you want to build your email list in 2018, which you should, then the opt-in shop is going to be your new best friend. It is truly done for you, plug and play, which means you purchase it, you put it in your funnel in your email system, and brides start opting in. It's pretty much that easy. It comes in 4 colors. It should come in a 5th color, but I'm actually changing the gray right now because it was a little too light. But it comes in 4 colors right now: black, blush, navy, or dark green. So hopefully one of those colors hits on your brand, and you are welcome to put your logo on it. You can't resell them. They're to give away as content upgrades or opt-ins for free only, but you're totally welcome to put your logo on it wherever you'd like. And if you need some help with that, let me know. But head over to shecreatesbusinesspodcast.com/shop and get your shop on. Start building your email list, and don't waste your time making the opt-ins because I've done it for you. So here we go. Let me tell you a little bit about Mary. She is the Chief Everything Officer of Mary Elizabeth & Co., fondly nicknamed Me & Co., which I think is adorable. She founded that company in 2013 after experiencing major burnout after 6 years as a wedding planner. Only a year after having vowed never to own another business, Me & Co., a strategic marketing and branding company for wedding and event pros, launched as a somewhat reluctant concession to that being an entrepreneur was truly in her blood. Like she couldn't get past it. She had to be an entrepreneur. I'm sure we can all agree, right? Within 2 years, Mary launched 2 additional divisions to Me & Co., the Wedpreneur, which is smart business for wedding pros, and Smitten & Co., a wedding planning and design company, which she runs with her business partner and co-host of their podcast. And her business partner's name is Janna Blaine. So, hey, Janna. Today, Mary successfully manages all 3 companies, but spends most of her time growing her community of wedding professionals through the Wedpreneur. With a focus on collaboration and community, the Wedpreneur helps wedding professionals of all levels create profitable and sustainable wedding businesses through mastermind groups, master classes, online courses, mentoring, and of course, through the power of shared knowledge within the community itself, which is such a blessing, right? Shared knowledge and just having somebody to bounce ideas off of is worth its weight in gold. Mary is indeed a certified special event professional through the International Live Events Association, where she is also a past vice chair of operations and corporate governance. Known for her passion for education and elevating the industry, she also serves on the advisory committee for the event management program at Bow Valley College and can often be found speaking at industry conferences throughout North America. She's from Canada. In her spare time, she loves hanging out with her 3 kids or hanging out with her lifelong best friends over a few cocktails. You are going to enjoy this interview. So without further ado, let's go to the show. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am excited for you to be here. You guys, we were just chatting offline. Mary and I feel like this has been the story of my life, actually, these last couple of interviews, but Mary and I first touched base back in May of 2017, and we were supposed to record an interview. And because I am super organized, not catch my sarcasm there. It is now November 7th as we are recording this. And so anyway, Mary, 6 months later, welcome to the show. And thanks for being so patient.
Oh, I totally understand. Life gets busy and I'm just happy I could be here.
I am thrilled to have you here. So today I'm excited about this podcast episode because I did an episode kind of similar, not really, but a little bit similar with Cece Todd earlier in 2016. And where we talked about being a multi-passionate entrepreneur, which of course, like Marie Forleo kind of coined the term. But I think we can all relate to it, whatever you want to call it. You know, you have interest in lots of passion projects, you have multiple businesses, you're multi-passionate, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of names for it, but at the end of the day, it just means that we like to do a lot of stuff. We're not just interested in one wedding business or one thing. We have a lot of different projects. And Mary, you are no exception. You are currently running 3 businesses simultaneously and doing lots of other things. You're a speaker, you're an educator, and I want to dig into all of that today and give the listeners an idea of really what it's like to be in those kinds of trenches. So we talked about this offline a little bit, and I know you're excited too. But before we really dig in, I gave everybody that professional bio there at the top of the show. But I would love for you, in your own words, tell us who you are, tell us what you're doing right now, and kind of how you're serving the wedding industry.
Absolutely. So my name is Mary Swaffield. I am a certified special event professional and pretty proud of that because let me tell you, that's a killer exam. It was not an easy test to write. So I always make sure I mention it so that I feel somewhat good about the torture I put myself through writing it.
There you go.
I have been in the wedding industry since the very beginning of 2008, which simultaneously feels like yesterday and a million years ago. So, and I got into the industry just kind of, I think like most of us, I kind of fell into it. I was actually on mat leave with my 3rd child. And I think this is probably something most entrepreneur moms understand. When I went on mat leave, I was so excited to have the time off work. Like I'd never really taken time off with my other 2 kids, but I was so excited to have a year off of work. And I had all these big plans about being super mom and like coupon clipping and all of this good stuff. And within like a month, I was like, okay, somebody save me from this. Like I can't just sit here with these lovely children whom I adore and mean the world to me, but I can't sit here and watch Dora the Explorer all day anymore.
Someone save me from these coupons.
Exactly. So, you know, and in my previous job, the job that I had was on mat leave from, I was a program coordinator for a post-secondary institution. So, you know, I was kind of like, well, what do I do in the meantime? And do I really want to go back and do that? I wasn't really sure. So in a way, fate intervened, which, you know, tends to happen in our lives if we're open to it. My husband at the time, we're not together anymore, but we are best friends still. Just want to point that out. My husband at the time had a staff Christmas party. He was a paramedic and he invited me and the kids and we went, and it was horrible. someone on our staff just kind of randomly. There was like pizza on the table from Domino's. Santa didn't show up. Like the music was not Christmas music at all or holiday music at all. It was so disorganized. There was like everybody was starving. They had Oreo cookie boxes for dessert. Like it was just, and I was so miserable the whole time. And I was like, someone needs to organize this party better. Like this is ridiculous. And on the way home, my husband was like, you know what? If you think you could do a better job, then why don't you just volunteer to do this next year? And I was like, wait a second, like people can do that. People can plan parties for a living. And so
That's a thing. I love it.
I was super excited because I was like, I'm seriously going to volunteer to do this. And I'm the kind of person that once I get like a bug in my ear about something, I become quite obsessive about it. So I went home and I started doing some research, and I found out that there is actually like a legit event management program at the local university here. So I thought about it, and when I looked back, it was like the light went on over my head. And when I looked back over all of the jobs I'd ever had, and I looked back over my personality, I thought about the fact that when I, planned birthday parties as a little girl, I used to hand my mother a menu and a timeline. And like, I was so that girl. I was so that girl my whole life. And I never really put two and two together that meant anything other than I really liked, to organize things, make things look good, and gather people. Those were like the three characteristics I knew I had. So anyways, not really long story short, but I ended up taking all of my savings and signing up for this course at the university, and instantly was in love. The first course I took was like Introduction to Event Management, and my instructor at the time, who became one of my mentors, talked a lot about risking and committing. Take the risk and then commit to it. And I feel like that's how I've lived my entire life. So, and I had an amazing, I wasn't going to go into weddings. I was going to do corporate, but then I had an amazing, legendary wedding planner who was the instructor for our logistics course. And she also taught a course called The Business of Wedding Planning. And I took it and was immediately like, this is it. This is the thing. This industry sounds perfect for me. It's all the logistics of corporate planning with the pretty that I'm obsessed with. So basically, like the next day I launched my business. I was like, I'm not waiting. I poured through 8 million. I still have my notebook through all the business names I thought of and rejected, which was a painful process.
Oh, yes.
But I landed on one, and, I feel like I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. I was that kid I loved to read, Kinsley, which we talked about. And I used to own like hundreds of books as a kid. And I was that kid who was like, you know what? One of my friends asked me if she could borrow a book, and I had this bright idea of making a database of all the books I had and charging the kids in my neighborhood 25 cents to borrow them. Like,
so brilliant.
I think being an entrepreneur has always been in my blood. I remember thinking when I was in kindergarten about what kind of restaurant I wanted to own and how I would sell the food to people. Like, I just had that in me from, early days. So yeah, when I launched my wedding planning business, I did a few things really right that I like to tell people about, which is the very first client that I got, and I was very blessed because my next door neighbor's cousin happened to be getting married and was looking for a wedding planner. And my cousin basically said, or her cousin basically said, you should hire my neighbor, Mary. She just started. And she ended up, it turns out, like, I didn't charge her next to anything, which is a whole other conversation. But it turns out she was the daughter of like an oil and gas executive. So it was a really big wedding. But I took 100% of what she paid me, and I spent that on professional graphic design and web design. So that's something I strongly encourage people to do, because I feel like making that professional presence made a huge difference in my ability I was booked solid my first year because of that. So it really took off in a way that I never expected it to. And by year 2, I had 2 other planners working for me because I just couldn't keep up with the volume that I was getting. And I rebranded as a higher end company and started getting some really big clients. And it was phenomenal. It was like my dream business. I never went back to work. I was able to just sort of float right into doing this full time. And I should have been thrilled. Like I won my first design award in my second year of business. Mm-hmm. And it was like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Like everything was coming up roses, and I'm sure for everybody looking at me, like it looked like I just had it all together. I remember like a really key moment for me was hearing that I think this was within my first year, like towards the end of my first year of business, there was a wedding conference called Wedding 360. I'd never been to a wedding conference before, by the way, and I didn't go to this one. It was somewhere in California, and a wedding planner from my hometown was there. And she texted me and she was like, holy crap, Mary, your website is up on the screen right now. And Sean Lowe and Rebecca Grinnells are talking about it, about how great it is.
So let's unpack that just a little bit. So this is a lot of good information, but you said something that is really sticking out to me. And that is that from your first wedding, which it sounds like it was, financially viable. They were an oil and gas industry exec who was the dad paying for it. You took that money and you invested in professional design. And tell us, unpack that a little bit and why you think that seriously impacted your business. Why did Sean Lowe put it up on the screen to show people? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and I think this is a mistake that I see a lot of new people to the industry make. And I totally 100% get it.
Totally.
I think, part of the attraction to this industry and many small businesses outside of this industry, but specifically the wedding industry, is there's no real barrier to entry. You could literally hang up your shingle tomorrow if you so choose to. And a lot of people do it because it's a low cost. They don't have to have, $20,000 in the bank or get a bank loan or anything like that.
Sure.
And yes, that was definitely something that was attractive to me. But when I did my market research, which I did right off the bat, one of the things I noticed was like, wow, there's a lot of bad websites out here for wedding planners. Like they're just bad. I guess, let me clarify. They were bad from my point of view in terms that they were not something I would ever do. So I had kind of this vision of what I wanted my brand identity to be. But let me clarify, back then especially, I really didn't know what that looked like. I just knew what it would feel like. So the first thing I said was, I am going to have a website that is so amazing. Especially back in 2008, 2009, there wasn't Instagram. There wasn't, like, social media was not really a thing yet. It was just starting out. So this was really your only way to market your business. And so I just knew that I knew it was going to be so important. And I also knew back then, although I couldn't really articulate it back then, I knew that if I was going to ask people to pay me for a professional service, I needed to walk the walk. Like I needed to pay other people to do a professional service for me too. If I was going to sell the value of having a professional handle something in your life, I needed to do the same thing. So, and I will say this, I can't emphasize this enough. I got really lucky. I did a lot of research in terms of finding the right brand strategist and web designer. And I stumbled upon someone through, like, the rabbit hole you go down when you Google stuff.
Totally.
And, well, I managed to find someone, and I knew instantly that her style was so me. It was so, like, it just resonated so strongly with me. And she was not local to me at all. I had no referrals for her or anything, but I reached out to her and we connected, and she just got it. She was able to, like, extract exactly what I wanted my brand to feel like into a gorgeous website and everything else. And I will say, I still, to this day, she is my go-to girl. I use her for everything. So when you find that person that really you can talk to, and she really understands you and she's able to understand your business, then don't ever let them go. Like, shout out to Kelly at Freshly Hatched, by the way. She's my girl, and I don't know what I would have done without her, because she's been responsible for several versions of my brand over the years, and she's amazing.
And so that first iteration of your brand that you felt really elevated your business, how much did you pay for that?
I believe, like, the website was probably about $2,000 back then, and the logo was like $100. I pay a lot more now.
Right.
than I did back then. But, it wasn't a huge expense, but it was literally 100% of what I made on my first wedding. And my second wedding, we did the same thing. So 100% of what my fee was, I took it and I made really nice business cards and marketing packages out of. So I would say probably the first 3 to 4 weddings that I did, 100% of that went back into marketing. It didn't go in my pocket. It didn't go anywhere else. In my head, I just knew that in order to be successful, I had to put forth a really professional brand and I had to get the word out there. So I was really dedicated to that. Now, I will say I had the benefit of being on a paid mat leave, so I didn't need the income at the time. But I also was really cognizant of the fact that pretty quick I was going to have to make a living doing this. So I wanted to make sure I put the money into it while I still could afford to.
I'm so glad you said that because I think it's a really important point. And listening right now, some of us might be thinking like, well, that's great, but I mean, $2,000 said it's not a huge expense to you, but that's a huge expense to me. And that, that was even back in 2009 or 2008. And now something like that is probably more, but I think, so I really appreciate you saying like, hey, listen, I did put 100% of my wedding profits back into my business, but understand I was on a paid maternity leave. So you were making money outside of that. That's what that's just like myself. I have a full-time job outside of my wedding business. And so I have flexible income that I can invest outside of what we make at Vista View events. And I think it's important for you guys to hear that because if you are only working your wedding business and that's all the income that you have, you're going to have to tweak what Mary is saying, or even what I say. You're going to have to tweak that a little bit so that it fits into your business. You may not be able to designate 100% of your profit because you have the electricity bill to pay. And I think that's 100% appropriate. I think this is just Mary's story and it's a great one, but understand that we're not telling you like, hey, you need to invest 100% of your profit or you're not doing it right. That's not what she's saying. She's saying, here's where I was and here is what I chose to do with those profits. Would you agree?
Yes, definitely. And what I advise people, like there's two kind of schools of thought to this, or two different strategies that can make this happen for you no matter where you are in your business or what you need. The first is when people say to me, I really want to start a wedding planning business or a wedding, stationery business or whatever, and they still have a full-time job. My advice to them is always, great, plan ahead. Don't do it tomorrow. Start saving, just like you would if you were going to open a storefront business. You need to have some savings because even though, okay, technically you don't have to, but it will actually have a huge impact on your business. It'll be far less of a struggle if you have a little bit of that money saved up at the beginning to invest in your business. And if you're at the other spectrum where you're already in your business and you're like, I really want to invest money back into my business, but I just can't spare anything, then I would say, start saving now. It doesn't have to happen tomorrow. You're obviously getting by with whatever you have right now, but start taking 10% of, whatever you make, if you can afford it, and pop it into an account to save to have whatever it is you want for your business. And if you can't afford 10% right now, then I would consider raising your prices to make it happen. And that's a whole other conversation.
Totally. Oh, yeah. I love that. And we've had, one of the examples that I wanted to share, which sometimes when this is let's see, what episode? I think it was episode 3. I had Ashley Iben on, who is a photographer on the East Coast, and she invested. It was a big investment. She invested, and I feel comfortable saying this because she said it on the show. She invested, I think, $5,000 in her rebrand, new website, all of that. And literally, what was it? You could go back to episode 3 to listen to the actual timeline, but I'm almost positive, like within 2 weeks or something, she had booked enough weddings to just pay back what she had just literally invested in her new brand, because her brand and her web presence and her marketing material was just so elevated. So she was able to raise her prices along with that rebrand and paid for it in 14 days. I mean, I feel like that's a really unique example. Of course, that's not going to be all of our stories, but I think it just proves Mary's point in saying that, if you want to charge more, or when you are ready to charge more, an elevated brand will help you do that, because the eye sees what it sees and it interprets what it interprets. So if you have a really pixelated, yucky site, well, I don't think people are going to be paying $10,000 for your photography services. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. And, to Ashley's point, the same thing happened to me when I invested in that brand, which is really the story of your business. And it's what, entices people or helps them connect with who you are as a business owner. By making that investment, it returned tenfold within the first year. So it really is probably one of the most important investments you can make in your business. It certainly worked for me. Having said that, I will say this was 2008, and having a really well-developed brand was almost unique at the time.
Right.
I feel like now it's much harder because there are so many tools out there for people to make their own websites look fantastic, or, it's the barrier to entry for a good website is a little bit, it's a crowded market of gorgeous brands now. Like, everybody's got it, I think, and it's really good. So it's almost a little harder to stand out as a business owner now. But there are lots of ways to do that. I find that what you have to do now is what's called integrated marketing. Your marketing has to touch like 25 touch points now, not just a website. So it's a little more work, but I still think there's so much value in having a professional guide you down that path.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. Okay. So we are off our professional brand high horses. I'm just kidding, you guys. But okay. So your website was on what was it called? Weddings 360?
Yeah.
It was on the big screen. Sean Lowe was talking about it. But there was a time where you burnt out in this first business. So take us through to that time and what happened. So you're doing great. There's your website. And a couple years later, it was like, oh my goodness. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So it was kind of one of those stories that you hear, and I had heard about this kind of thing, and I was like, oh, that'll never happen to me. But really, there's such a thing as getting too successful too fast, I think, in a way. And I'm sure people are like, okay, cry me a river. But I had two planners working for me. We had, all three of us had tons of weddings happening. We were working with, sports celebrities and all of this great stuff. But I was still just working out of my tiny little home office, and I was still really new, which is something I knew, but I don't know that I ever put that out there. Like, I never really accepted it, how much I didn't know. I certainly didn't know a lot about running a business. I became a very good wedding planner and a very good wedding designer. I felt like I naturally had those skills, and I was naturally I had some good intuition about business, but I didn't really know what I was doing. So quickly, as we took on more weddings and bigger weddings, things kind of started to spiral out of control a little bit, where I started to feel very overwhelmed with my finances, with managing my staff, with handling my clients. Like, everything just started to feel very overwhelming. I'm one of those people that is just all in. When I'm in, I am all in. And I was, on the board of my local ILEA association. I was volunteering to teach in different locations. And what nobody really saw was that deep down, when I came home at night, I was terrified that I was screwing everything up. And I was so scared of losing control out of all of the stuff I was managing. I was scared of disappointing my clients. And when you work with big name clients, the risk is very high. And I was terrified, and I was terrified all the time. And I started to get progressively less interested in the business. Like, I had this little home office that I used to get up in my first 3 or 4 years, I used to get out of bed and I wouldn't even brush my teeth. I was so excited to get to my office and get to work. And I was there all day, all night, and I loved it. Like, I couldn't have been happier to be doing it. All of a sudden, I noticed that when I would walk to the door of my office, I would get a stomach ache. And I would find excuses to do anything else. In fact, I've probably never been so happy to wash dishes in my entire life, because if that meant I did not have to go into my office for 45 minutes. And then I tried a couple different tactics. I'm a fixer. When I recognize problems, I try to fix them. So I tried bringing on a business partner, which failed miserably. I tried, outsourcing some of the work, which actually didn't work for me because I wasn't organized enough to do that properly. I tried handing my planners more work so that I could do less client work, and they were kind of overwhelmed. And then, like I said at the onset, sometimes the universe, if you're not paying attention, the universe will make you pay attention. And a couple things happened all at once. I had a client that was unhappy and was threatening to sue me because she was so unhappy. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't anything I had done that had made her unhappy. It was like a combination of really weird things. But then I had the business partner I had worked on trying to bring it into the fold sued me.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And that was a devastating blow. I ended up winning that lawsuit, by the way. But anyways, it was just devastating. Right. And a big betrayal from my point of view. And I felt very blindsided by that. And then I still wasn't paying attention. And I even had mentors in my industry who were pulling me aside and saying, I'm worried that you're going to burn out. You're going so hard, so fast. And we're worried about you. And I would brush it off and be like, no, I got this. Right. Because that's just who I was like, I can handle anything. But deep down, I'm crying myself to sleep every night. And then, some of the people in the wedding industry here locally started kind of turning against me. What I've learned is some people don't like it when you're successful. Some people will raise you up and some people will try to tear you down. And I started getting, nasty emails from other wedding planners anonymously, quote unquote. And all of this was happening. And then a very dear friend of mine in the industry who ran like a design and decor company, but had a wedding division. We went for coffee one day and he said, I really need some help. I need some wedding help. I need someone to manage the wedding part of my business. I just can't, we're getting so busy and I don't know what to do. And I looked at him and I said, buy me out, buy my company out, take me, I'm yours. And he looked at me and said, are you serious? Like, you have worked so hard to build this brand and this business. And I said, I'm 100% serious. I'm done. I can't do this anymore on my own. I just can't. I need some support. I need something bigger. So we shook on it. And a few months later, I closed down Lavish, which was my company. And I went to work for someone else, which was pretty crazy for me, the passionate entrepreneur. And people were really shocked about it. But at the time, it was the right move. I was broken. Like, I just couldn't, if I hadn't have made that move, I think I would have, possibly had a mental breakdown. Like, I was so overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And as it turns out though, and this is sort of interesting, like I said, you risk and you commit, right? So I took the risk and I committed to his company. And he is a great friend, like one of my best friends, best business buddies. After a year of working together, we both realized that, what the truth is, I'm not really good at working for other people.
I was wondering how that would work out.
Yeah, I just, it was like we were both the same personality. And what I've learned too is that when you want a partner in your business or you want someone to work with, it's good to have someone who's the opposite of you, because we were both dreamers and both had a specific vision that didn't necessarily connect. And he saw it far earlier than I did. I was still taking refuge in his business to a certain extent, but I think he was wise enough to look at it and see, you know what, this isn't the right way for us to have a relationship in business. It's not fitting properly. And as things moved on, he ended up, his business now, for example, doesn't really handle weddings anymore. He realized he doesn't really like weddings. He wanted out. So he ended up letting me go, which was a devastating moment for me. Like, I felt like I'd lost everything. I'd lost my business and now I lost my job. And to get a little personal, because life is personal and stuff happens to people. And I think it's really important to know that this can happen to anybody and you have to find your way through it. About 2 or 3 weeks before he let me go, my nephew was actually murdered. I know. Yeah. I mean, it's so random. It's one of those things that you never think will happen to you.
Yes.
He was 18 and he had just come back from Bolivia where he was studying abroad, and went out to celebrate with some of his friends and got jumped by a whole bunch of guys. And it's a very long story that I won't get into, but needless to say, like, it was absolutely devastating to me and to my kids, especially because they were very close to him. And when a few weeks later I lost my job, I think that's when the world kind of came crashing down on me. And I realized, like, not only am I grieving and is my family grieving, but now I don't have a job. And the industry, the event industry and the wedding industry is a family. And I felt humiliated, and I felt like I'd lost my family and I had no one. I had nothing. And I remember lying in bed thinking to myself, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Like, I've given everything to this business, to this industry, and it ended up ending so horribly for me. And I was really lost. And I'm not the kind of person to be lost. I'm not the kind of person who never has a plan. And I had no plan. And I had no job. Mm-hmm. And it was a really painful time for me. And I know there's a lot of listeners out there who are like this, who are the strong person in their family. They're the carrier of the burdens, and they are the fixers of everything. And I know you hear me. I know you do, because when you're not in a position to be that for other people, you carry a lot of guilt with you. So here I am with no income, no business, no job, grieving over the loss of a dear family member through a horrible, horrible way to go. That just completely changed my perception of the world being a safe place and my children's perception. And I didn't know what to do. And so for the first time in my life, for 8 months, I did nothing. Which is a hard thing for someone who is always busy and always has a passion to do. I did nothing. I basically, I don't want to call it a breakdown because it wasn't that cut and dry, but I was on unemployment insurance, thankfully, but that runs out eventually. And eventually I knew I was going to have to do something with the rest of my life. But I told everybody who would listen to me that I was never, ever going to own another business, ever. It broke my heart, and I just was not interested in going back there. But something, again, the universe works in very strange ways, because I made some big decisions. When you have that much time by yourself to think about your life and who you are and what you want to do, and I was able to look back and see clearly some of the mistakes I'd made. I ended up leaving my marriage, which is something they tell you not to do when you're grieving, by the way. But I saw, all of a sudden, I started to see very clearly what I wanted my future to look like. And I gave myself time to heal, and I gave myself time to really think about and be present in the decisions about my future. And an interesting thing happened just when I was at the point of, like, I have no more unemployment insurance coming my way. I've decided to leave my husband, so I don't even have a plan to have a roof over my head. Someone from the wedding industry called me, a dear friend of mine. She's a florist, and I'd worked with her many times at various weddings. The strangest thing out of the blue, she called me and she said, listen, can we go for lunch? And I was like, wow, like, I haven't heard from you in a very long time, but yeah, let's do it. And I thought maybe she was going to, if she's listening, she'll find this really funny. I thought she was going to offer me a job. So I was like, yeah, if she's going to offer me part-time work helping her with flowers, I got to take it because I need it. Mm-hmm. But instead, she sat down and she said, you know what? I really need help with my brand. I need help deciding on a new logo, and I need help with social media, and I need help with the business part of my business because I've been neglecting it. I'm so busy doing flowers and servicing clients that I haven't paid any attention to my business in a long time. And I looked at her and I was like, why on earth would you call me? And she said, you know what? You have always had such an amazing brand and your business has always been successful. Why wouldn't I call you? And I told her, you know what, Tracy, I'm not sure I'm up to this. I'm not sure that I can give that energy to you right now, but let me think about it. And Kinsey, the funniest thing is I started to drive home and I felt this little spark again. I felt this tiny, tiny flicker of a spark. And at that moment I knew. I was like, okay, this is it. This means something. If I let it mean something, it's going to mean something big. And I went home, and within an hour I'd written a business plan for a new business. And Tracy, if you're listening, I don't want to tear up, but like, you have no idea the impact you've had on me that one lunch. I will never forget it, because you gave me you put your faith in me to be able to help you, and you recognized something in me I didn't even know was there, at a time when I was very lost. And that's how Mary Elizabeth & Co. was born. So that's the first out of my 3 companies. And I ended up helping her develop her brand. And I made some relationships with some great web designers and graphic designers, because I don't do that, but I can guide the brand. So, and I didn't even have a website, ironically, for that company, and I still don't, never have. But word got around that I was doing this, and before I knew it, I had 7 or 8 businesses, wedding businesses, asking me to help them with their brand identity and their social media and their marketing plans. And next thing you know, like I have this business and I'm absolutely loving it. And, you know, it just goes to show that if you open yourself up to the time to heal and really to see where you want to go in your business, the most amazing things can happen. And from there, I started to get phone calls from wedding planners who wanted to know if I offered coaching services. And I had never really thought of doing that. But once I took on a few clients, I found that I have a deep passion for teaching, especially teaching business. And I realized that didn't really fit in with the Mary Elizabeth & Co. brand. So the Wedpreneur was born, and that's the business that it's my biggest passion in life, which is helping other wedding professionals become really good business owners. Because I feel like if I had a really solid foundation to my business when I started out, I could have probably avoided the disaster that happened to me, basically. And that's what my baby is now. I also relaunched a wedding planning business, which I do with a partner, Janna. She's amazing. And that's my 3 businesses now. Long story, very long story.
No, I love it so much. And I did not interrupt at all, because I wanted everyone to hear like the trajectory of your career in the industry. I think that a lot of times it's so glossy, you know, it's so glossy on Instagram and our websites and this, and it's kind of almost, it's not like frowned upon, but it's hard to find someone who will tell you like the real truth about kind of what's going on in their business. I was actually just talking to one of my dear friends about this, and just kind of telling her like, oh, I'm tired, and I don't really feel inspired about a lot of things. This was a couple months ago. I have since gained that back, but I did, but I only shared it with her. It was so anyway. I just cannot thank you enough for being so willing to share this part of your story, because not many people would be willing to say, like, I was a bad business owner. I did not know how to run my business. And do you think what I found really interesting about this, Mary, is that do you feel like there's something to say about when you were running Lavish, it was very, how can I grow my business? How can I make it bigger, make it better, make it all the things? And now almost all 3 of your businesses have really transferred that energy to helping other people.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you see that too?
I do. And there's something to be said for the amount of, suffering and angst I went through. I would hate for anyone to go through that. And I will say that it's a joke in my household that when I make mistakes, I make them really big. And that's just how I've always been. And, I screw up big time when I do it. It's that risk and commit factor, right? Like I commit to my mistakes too. And I would hate to see anybody else go through that, especially because I really feel like it was so avoidable. I feel like if I had not been trying to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, in a business sense. If I had listened to what I actually wanted to do in my business and the kind of clients I really wanted to work with, and paid more attention to, I think, what my truth was in terms of how much I could handle. But I've always been, that kind of person that just felt like, well, if they're able to handle it, I should be able to handle it. But I learned some really hard truths about what my personal limits are. And I do find it quite funny that, I swore off business forever and now I own 3, but I've been able to find a much better balance about it. I take a very limited number, for example, of website clients, only 3 a year now. And I take on a very limited number of weddings. I actually don't even do the weddings personally anymore. Janna, my business partner, and I came to a really beautiful agreement where she handles the clients and we have 2 other planners, or another full-time planner, or not full-time, another full planning planner, and then 2 assistants that work with us. They handle all the clients and I run the business. And I think that has transformed the way we do things, because I really feel like we're able to divide and conquer, so to speak. And that's when I said it's important to find someone, if you're looking for a business partner, it's important to find someone who's kind of the opposite of you. And, she was actually a coaching client of mine originally. And I had helped her launch her business and done her website and her branding and everything. But she really wasn't passionate about the business side, and I really was. So we were able to do that. But I'm very aware of what my limits are now. And I'm much, and this is really important, much better at saying no. I just know what I can handle and what I can't handle. And I'm very, very comfortable saying no when it gets to the point where I can sort of feel that overwhelm coming back. Yes. And it took a long time to be able to do that, because you have that FOMO, right? Like you never know if this opportunity is going to lead to something really great. And so you don't want to turn away from it. But this is where I think strategic planning has been really powerful for my business. And this is one of those steps I never took back in the day with Lavish, is for all 3 of my businesses, I have a strategic plan for the year. And if an opportunity comes along and it doesn't fit into that plan, then I put it on the shelf and I say, okay, that is not part of our strategic plan for this year. We can look at it next year and build it into our strategic plan. But if not, we're gonna let it go, because otherwise we'll get off track with what our goals are.
Yes.
And that's been a big change for my business.
And you are in this business in Smitten & Co. You are who you never had. You were trying to be all the things, and now there's other people running the client end of the show and you're running the business side. So you have transformed into the person that you really needed in your own business to make Smitten & Co. run so much more smoothly.
Yes. And
brilliant.
It is so good. And I recognize that not everybody has that opportunity or can outsource even to have that, which is, I think, why, my big mistake in Lavish is why the Wedpreneur exists. Because if I can help wedding professionals become better business owners, if I could teach them about, profit and loss and strategic planning and all of the things that we never really learn how to do, even just a little bit. You don't have to be perfect at it. You don't have to, turn into some sort of corporate CEO by any means, but you at least have to be able to wear that CEO hat a little bit in your business, or else it's just never going to be sustainable. I think if you look at all the successful wedding professionals that are out there that have long-term businesses, they will tell you that they had to learn how to become really good business owners in order to make that happen.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said as well about growing at a pace that's more comfortable.
Amen.
So because it is, I mean, the fact is you are not going to be able to outsource on day one. The fact is you may not be able to invest $8,000 in your website. Those are facts, right? Like we could say all day long, up-level your brand, outsource, blah, blah, blah. And that's true. Those are all great things. But the fact is when you're just starting. That's just logistics. And so it's important to, and I think this kind of goes to your point, but it also is, directly from your own story, you grew really fast and maybe too fast. And so I think it's important to recognize, as you say, your own limits, and you don't have to be all the things. And if you do 5 weddings in your first year, because that's what you can handle, that's what you have the capacity to do the bookkeeping for, you do 5 weddings really, really well, all the way down to your expenses, then you know what? That is a huge success. If that's 2 weddings, that's a huge success, because you can scale those things instead of saying, well, I want to take on 25 clients because that's what I need to leave my full-time job. That may not be the right thing for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, give yourself time. If you think about the fact that, most companies out there outside of our industry do not achieve success within a year or 2.
That's
and
right.
In this industry, especially because we're often booking, our actual services aren't often happening until a year out from our booking, that expands the window of how long it takes us to grow and be successful in our businesses exponentially. And I think that if you give yourself time to grow sort of organically, and set goals for yourself year over year in terms of your professional development and in terms of how many clients and what kind of clients you're going to work with, then, they say business is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And I tried to sprint the whole way through 5 years, and it did not work. So I think that if you pace yourself and really allow yourself to recognize that you're going to be in a growth pattern for many years. They say 50% of wedding businesses go out of business within the first 3 years. And I think part of that is because there's no plan. And if it's a lot easier, if you, for example, in your first year of business, have 3 weddings and you're like, well, that sucked, I only got 3 weddings. But if you set a goal for 3 weddings and that's what you do, you're going to feel really different about your business. So I think it's about being realistic and understanding what's achievable and not beating yourself up. Gosh, we are so quick to beat ourselves up in this industry.
Yes.
And we need to be kinder to ourselves and kinder to our colleagues, and really look at how we can help each other grow instead of constantly comparing ourselves to the next person. Because let me tell you, you don't know their story. They could be crying themselves to sleep at night just like I was. You do not know what their story is. So be kind to each other and be kind to yourself above all, and don't worry about slow growth. It's that I was a musician for many, many years. That was my former career many years ago. And I was a very talented musician, but I remember asking a famous conductor came to work with our orchestra once, and I asked him, what's the secret? I'm just a student. What's the secret to success in this industry? And he said something that I'll never forget, because I said, is it talent? And he said, well, not at all. In fact, talent is not even a requirement in this industry. He said the people who succeed have a little bit of talent, but what they have is persistence, and they don't quit. They keep going no matter how long it takes them. And that really stuck with me, because I realized that I was sort of leaning on talent so much, but I wasn't looking long-term and willing to sort of commit to a long-term plan. And I think that in the wedding industry, if we just accept within ourselves that success could take 5 or 10 years, then, we won't be so hard on ourselves, and we won't be reaching so high all the time and beating ourselves up when we don't get there.
I love that. I could not agree more. A lot of times I think it is easy to say, well, it's because they're better, they're this, they're bigger, faster, stronger, all
Yep.
the things. When the fact is, actually, a lot of people quit, and so they have just stuck around longer.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true.
It's so true. Well, Mary, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel we barely scratched the surface, and I want to do a part 2 because I feel like I say, I feel like there should be Mary part 2. And that's a real thing. We're coming up on 50 minutes. I would love for you to talk to us about the Wedpreneur. What do you do there? And then we'll wrap up, and I have some kind of fun questions for you.
Sure. Sounds good. So yeah, for anybody who is listening, the Wedpreneur is an amazing community of wedding professionals from all over the world. We obviously have a Facebook group, because that's the thing you got to do these days. It's an amazing Facebook group, and we're focused very much on education in terms of growing your business and learning how to be a better business owner. So you can check that out. If you just if you search in Facebook, the Wedpreneur community, you will find us. And then I offer three programs that I think are really helpful to wedding professionals of all stages and locations and all that good stuff. I offer a mastermind program once a year, which starts in January, and that is a peer accountability program that we help support. I'm really passionate about wedding professionals supporting each other and helping keep each other accountable, because I know how important that would have been to me, especially in the beginning years. And even now, I find that, having that accountability piece keeps me focused. Mm-hmm. And then I offer an online course called the Pricing Lab, which is all about learning how to know the numbers in your business, from understanding positioning, understanding setting a budget for your business, understanding your expenses, and how all of this translates into setting your prices based on value factors, not just experience. I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that experience is the only factor to take into consideration when setting your pricing, and it really isn't. So I offer that 4 times a year. And then my favorite program right now is the Wedding Planner Intensive. And this is a group coaching program that I offer for wedding planners, no matter what stage you're at. And this is basically an intense 8-week program to help you develop all of the systems and processes in your business, your wedding planning business. Because this is something I was really good at, especially from the beginning in my business. And I think that feeling of being overwhelmed and disorganized is more easily managed if you have really amazing processes in your business. So that's a program that I offer 3 times a year. And I love it because I get to work it's very not one-on-one, but I get to be very present in the group and help guide them through the different systems and processes in their business. So yeah, but above those 3 programs, the main thing is our Facebook group, where we, hang out and support each other. And sometimes we vent about things that are going on in the industry. And, I'm passionate about elevating our industry in general, because I feel like, when you look at the big picture, we're a fairly new industry, and we're kind of like the little brother of the event industry, or the little sister of the event industry. And I want to see us rise up and really be able to show our value, not just to our clients, but to the greater world in general. So I'm very passionate about that. So I encourage anybody listening, check us out, check out our Facebook group. We'd love to have anybody join and be a part of it. And yeah, that's pretty much what the Wedpreneur is all about.
I love it. There's so much going on there. So many good, valuable things for people to take part in and join a community. So you guys, I will have all of those in the show notes, so you can just tap your podcast player and head over there if any of those sound like something that you are interested in, which I'm sure they are. So Mary, before we go, I have a couple of questions for you that I think are fun and just an easy way for us to get to know a little bit more about you, that little more personality. Okay, so what are you reading right now?
I'm actually reading Profit First, that's my business. Like Kinsey, we were talking beforehand. I always have like a fun book on the go and then a business book on the go. So the business book I'm reading is called Profit First, and it has changed the way I look at my business so powerfully. So I highly recommend it. And then the fun book I'm reading, I'm going to look at my phone to see what it's called, because I just started reading it. It is the latest John Grisham novel, The Rooster Bar.
I love that. And Profit First is by Mike Michalowicz, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool. The one.
And then the latest John Grisham. Okay, so are you like a thriller type person?
I am.
Or did you just pick it up? Okay. I love that. What are you listening to?
Music-wise?
Anything. Music, podcasts, whatever.
Oh, gosh. I am a podcast obsessive person. So the newest podcast, let me just look, because I listen to so many. The newest podcast that I started listening to unrelated to business is called Conversations with People Who Hate Me. And it's really interesting and powerful, and I really recommend it.
Oh, and what is that about exactly? Like it's
actually a online personality. This guy, I've never heard of him before, and he makes kind of satirical videos on YouTube about social topics. And what he found was, as he was making these, he is a gay man, and as he was making all of these, people were sending him hate mail and tons of hate messages. So he decided, instead of just letting them kind of hurt him, he was actually going to reach out to these people and invite them on a podcast and ask them why they felt compelled to write hateful messages to him. And the most powerful thing is in the podcast, seeing these people. So the host and the person who left him hate mail typically will find a way to have a conversation about the issues of the day and the reason behind the messaging that is quite civil and quite eye-opening. And they never really it's not like they get converted either way. It's never like they really agree on anything. But his point behind this podcast was to prove that we can have fundamental differences in our belief systems and still be able to have meaningful conversations.
That is incredible. I'm putting that on my TBL list right now.
Quite
I love
good.
that thought process. Okay, if you were going to pick up one of these beverages, which one would it be? Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Okay.
Black.
Okay, coffee black. All right. Just put it in. Put it in, do your job. Okay. I love it. Okay, and finally, are you binging any television shows right now?
Yes, I just finished watching Stranger Things season 2, which I think everybody just finished watching.
Not me. Okay.
And then I just started Wentworth, which I had heard a lot of good things about, but but I'd never started. So I'm just into season 2, and it is definitely binge worthy.
Wait, is that's an older show, isn't it, or not?
I think so. I think there's 6 or 7 seasons now, which is, I get really excited about that because that means that I have a lot of binging ahead of me. And it's Australian, I think, or something like that. So it wasn't something that was on my list, but I kept seeing it pop up on Facebook from people whose opinions I really respect. So I decided to check it out, and it's quite good.
Brilliant. I love it. Mary, I really want to thank you for coming on the show. And more than that, and I hope you take this as seriously as I mean it, is thank you for sharing everything that you shared today with me, with my listeners. There was a lot of information here, but I really appreciate how personal and how open you were. And I know that that's not always easy. And I'm just blown away by you. I really, really want to thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Kinsey. I really appreciate it.
It has been my true pleasure, and we'll have to do part 2. But thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.
You too, Kinsey.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.